recipe for great food is simple. Make it fresh. Wings to Go in Greenville, where every order is a custom order made with fresh ingredients. Wings to Go, 7818 Wesley Street in Greenville. Simply great wings.
Love your car or truck? You'll love it more with a new sound system from Supersound in Greenville. They've got all the hot brands like JL Audio, Alpine, Hyphonics, Pioneer, Rockford Fosgate, Kicker, Heiss, and more. And great technicians to do the install. Supersound in Greenville, 5013 Wesley Street. They make sound move you. Supersound and Security.
Hey.
I've got 5 o'clock, and we'll open a work session for 28th. First item for discussion is Greenville East Sub-Area Thoroughfare and Traffic Analysis. Mr. Hilton, would you do us an honor, sir? Get the mic closer to you so everybody can hear you. Hold it up. Yeah.
Accept it, and we appreciate the staff and all the people that contributed to that. So, Sandeep?
Good evening, y'all. Thanks for the introduction, G. So some of you may be familiar. Last year we did a study, very similar study for the West sub area, and then there was, after that, there was desire to do a very similar traffic analysis and thoroughfare needs evaluation for the East sub area. So that's what I'm here to make the present the findings of that study today. Okay. So the outline of the presentation today is, I'll talk about the study purpose briefly, followed by the scenario development that we did for the 5-year and 10-year analysis, followed by the explanation of the traffic forecast, which included the trip generation, trip distribution, and different steps to come up with the future traffic demand. Then I'll talk about the traffic operations analysis methodology and the findings of that analysis. And finally discuss the thoroughfare needs that came out of the study findings and make the recommendations for the updated thoroughfare plan and improvements. And then we'll end with any questions you may have. So the purpose of the study is basically to do a traffic analysis and assessment of the thoroughfare needs in the east sub-area. The sub-area is basically bound by State Highway 34 on the west, I-30 and Highway 69 on the north, and Highway 1570 on the east and the south side. We identified the roadway improvement needs for the 5-year and 10-year scenarios into the future. And then we came up with the updated thoroughfare network needs based on the findings and revised the thoroughfare plan for the east area. Just to give you an outline of the project schedule, we started the study early in February with notice to proceed on 11th February. Immediately after that, we held the stakeholder meeting along with the kickoff meeting for the project. And then we collected the data in the first week of March. And we were basically trying to avoid the spring break, but that was a blessing in disguise. Because had we waited a couple of weeks, then we would have gotten into the effects of the COVID and the changes in travel patterns, and the data we would have collected would not be good for the purpose of the analysis. So we're really fortunate to hit that mark and complete the data collection there. Then followed by that, we took a couple of months to analyze the data and evaluate the findings, and then presented the draft results to the city and the county on 22nd May. Presented the draft report a couple of weeks after that. And then any comments we received on the draft report, we addressed those and updated the report to prepare a final report that was submitted on 8 July. And here we are today making the final presentation of the findings to you all. The next step is the scenario development. So any future demand in 5 years, 10 years, or the long term would be dependent on what's the background growth as well as what's the new development that's coming up in the area. So in order to get the information of all the future development, we involved a lot of stakeholders, of course, the city planning staff and the county staff. But in addition to that, we had Greenville ISD representatives. We had representatives from L3 Harris to provide input on what are the future plans and what are the existing constraints they have that they would like addressed in the study. And then together with the city planning staff, we came up with a map of all the developments that are going to happen in 5 and 10 year scenarios. And any missing information related to, if it's a single family home, then how many dwelling units needs to be there. So any missing information, we made assumptions and got approval from the city. If you end the slideshow and then restart it, it should come.
We're on slide 5.
Okay. All right. So that map basically. area. One of the notable ones is the Caribeth Crossing, the second phase. That is a significant mixed-use development that would generate more than 2,000 trips in the AM and PM peak hour as per the findings from our last study. So all of those developments were accounted for in the analysis for this study area. I don't anticipate you to read this, but basically it's a database of all the developments which lists all the land use types, the units of development, and then what we do is for generating the trips, we apply what we call the trip generation rates from the Institute of Transportation Engineers trip generation guidelines. That's the national database that has over 50 years of research-based trip rates from hundreds of different land uses from US and Canada. And they have database on how many trips would be generated based on specific units, whether it's dwelling units or square foot of development, or for a gas station, number of filling stations, and so forth. And based on those rates for the AM peak hour and PM peak hour, we created this database that in the green columns, we would have the inbound and outbound trips for each of the development. So there are thousands of trips would be generated, as you can see from all this development, and about 2/3 of all those trips would be within the first 5 years of analysis, and about 1/3 between 5 and 10 years. So after trip generation, once we know how many trips would be generated in the area, the next step would be to distribute those trips onto the roadway network. And that is done based on the origins and destinations of the trips. And we use several databases. Generally it's based on the available roadway network, the current traffic patterns, but we had a lot of good information to supplement that information. For example, for the residential uses, we used information from the Hunt County Transportation Plan, which had information on the worker flows from the Greenville area into surrounding counties, and we used that information as to glean the percentage of trip distribution for the residential uses. For all the retail and commercial uses, we used information from that we gathered from one of the developers for the Caribeth. They had done a cell phone survey to gather information on where the users of the current development are coming from in the area, and map that, and we use that information to get estimates on how many people would be coming from different areas to the study area. And then, of course, for the school, we used the Greenville ISD's attendance zone to come up with the distribution percentages. Based on all that information, so we have 3 different distribution assumptions. One is for residential uses, and it assumes that 40% of the trips would be going to the west and southwest to Dallas and Rockwall using I-30, and about 30% to the north, North Greenville and Northeast Hunt County, and about a smaller percentage, 10% each, to the west, south, and east. These are similar to the assumptions we made in the previous study. For the non-residential uses, because for the commercial developments, the trips will be shorter, so more trips will be coming from shorter distances. So we assumed 50% coming from the city of Greenville and the areas to the north, about 20% from the southwest, 15% from the east, and then 10% and 5% from south and west, respectively.
You're saying that there's only 5% would go west, and that there's 50% going north?
Yes, and that is looking at not just the city of Greenville, the immediate area, but also the larger county. And that is based on the information from the catchment cell phone data that was collected for the commercial development.
I find it hard to believe that you expect more traffic going north than headed back and forth between here and McKinney. I mean, there's a lot of truck traffic, a lot of industrial traffic.
That is more mainly for commercial uses, like your retail and stuff. Like a Caribeth crossing would be a good example. So if you have like a Walmart or a restaurant and those kind of retail uses, then you would have shorter trips. Basically, the catchment area for those trips would be much shorter compared to if the commuter trips, which would be going farther distance, like to the Dallas County for work. So that was the basis for the assumption there. And it's backed by the information we got from the other sources.
So basically what you're saying is if the people came out of the study area and crossed I-30 to go to Cary Beth, that would be considered a northbound trip, right?
Yeah, so, and again, in the next few slides, I'll show you how it relates to the roadway network also. So it's not just related to, because we identify like 5 different nodes from where the traffic is coming from. So even though it sounds like, 5% to the west is basically using 380. So there are other steps that accounts for the availability of roadways and their orientation with respect to the site, specific sites. And then for the future middle school, the distribution was again.
The non-residential users would exclude residents from, say, McKinney that would be going to L3.
Jerry, you need to use your mic so that they can hear.
But
For
non-residential users, I assume, exclude somebody that might be commuting from McKinney to go to work at L3. Is that right? In this model,
Yes.
on this slide,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
It's only commercial.
Commercial, yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
And each of this distribution percentages is applied to a specific land use based on what kind of land use it is. So once we have the distribution, the next step is to assign those trips onto the roadway network. This is the snapshot from the traffic model that we used, which shows basically that once you have the origin destination pair for each of the land uses, then we decide on the possible routes based on the available network. And there could be multiple routes, more than one. So for example, you decided 10% of the trips go from west to that specific development that I'm showing with the red dot there. Then there could be multiple routes. So each of these lines on the table there shows a specific route and its percentage. And there could be multiple routes adding up to 100%. So based on all the summation of all the different routes between each origin destination pair in the study area, the model gives the intersection turning movement volumes, which is shown in a small square box there at the lower right corner, at each of the intersections in the study area. That's an accumulation of all the trips from the site generated traffic. So once we get the site generated traffic, then we also look at the historical growth, because the future volumes is a combination of how many new trips would be generated in combination with what is the background growth in the existing traffic. What we do is basically use the 20-year historical data that is available from TxDOT, what we call AADT, which is the average annual daily traffic that is collected on state-maintained roadways. So we gathered those at several locations on I-30, on US 69, State Highway 34, and FM 1570 to kind of develop a historical trend line. And based on the regression of the trend line, we project the historical trends into the future, saying that if historically the traffic has been growing at a particular growth rate, then we project that growth rate into the future. That's a standard TxDOT planning methodology. So that gives us a growth rate in the area. You can see I-30 has been growing at a historical growth rate about 1.5% a year over the last 20 years. But most of the other roadways, like we noticed, US 69 and FM 1570 has been more or less steady at a growth of less than 1%, very minimal growth. And State Highway 34 actually is showing a decline in the growth over the last few years. But for the purpose of the study, we didn't use a negative growth. We used at least the current traffic trends. And if the traffic was growing, then we used the higher growth rate, that particular growth rate that we calculated.
So your analysis on this stopped in 2018. You haven't looked at what it's doing in the last couple of years?
So the data, there is a lag in the text.collects data, and it's available usually towards the end of the year. So 2019 data would not be available until the end of 2020. So that was the latest data available, like until 2018 was the latest data available at the time of the analysis.
So why do you expect that there was a peak around, looks like 20, Brett, is that 2013?
Yeah, so that is what the historical data shows for State Highway 34. I'm not sure of the specific reasons why the traffic was higher in that particular area. But what whenever we use historical trends, you can see there are always variations, because of local factors and different trends. So what the regression method does, it normalizes all these ups and downs. So it creates a general linear growth trend. So you don't, if we were to use, for example, a shorter period, like you said, the last 8 years, then the data would be skewed because, it's maybe showing a lower trend.
2013, I think, was maybe toward the end of the I-30 construction project. And so people were bypassing.
I just find it strange that they're showing a full decline in Wesley Street when anybody that drives on Wesley would think the slope's going the other way.
Well, I believe that traffic on 34 has probably doubled or tripled in the last 5 years.
Yeah,
It's unbelievable.
But yet the chart shows that it's going down, and
Yeah.
we only have,
So-
I don't know, 16,000 cars on there.
I experienced that traffic. So,
Well, you shouldn't drive on it so much.
okay, I'm sorry.
Well, but when you look at the graph, the red and the green lines are just between, north of Cary Lane and south of Joe Ramsey. So 13 and that's when Crossroads Mall and that was under construction. So a lot of the traffic would have dropped off in that period. So.
But if you ignore the peak, I mean, it's a downward slope, and I just find that hard to believe on Wesley. As Dr. Ransom said, anybody that's driven on that just sees it increasing on a daily basis.
And
Yeah.
again, you can see the variation.
6-8.
Where's that coming from?
So north of 34, there is 23 to 24,000 traffic historically in the range, and as you go south, it's lower traffic trend. So this chart then shows the overall methodology of how we develop the future volumes. On the top, you start with identifying the proposed development, then apply the trip distribution, generation, and traffic assignment steps to get the total site traffic. And then on the bottom row, you see we start with the existing traffic counts, and then apply the annual growth rate to get to a future background traffic for the 5 and 10 year scenarios. And then on top of that, add the site traffic generated from different developments to come up with a future total traffic demand at all the intersections and roadways to do the analysis. The next step is the traffic analysis. The scenarios that we analyzed was for the AMP car and the PMP car for the 5-year no-build scenario, which means if you don't do anything to the existing roadway network, what would be the situation as far as traffic operations? And then the 5-year mitigation, which would be improving the existing intersections to mitigate those impacts. And then similarly for 10-year scenarios. The criteria for evaluation is what is called the levels of service, which is based on the delay at the intersections. The table there basically shows the definition in terms of levels of service from A to F. Level of service A, B, or C is generally considered acceptable with a delay of less than 35 seconds per vehicle at the intersection. And once you start getting into D, E, and F, then it's, level of F is basically a congested condition where you would have more than 80 seconds of delay at the intersections for signals. So we use this criteria for evaluation of the intersections. Looking at the results based on that criteria and the traffic demands, this is showing the existing conditions for the AM and PM peak hour at all the intersections in the study area. As you can see, most of the intersections are working at an acceptable level of service, except a few notable ones on the major thoroughfares, which is the State Highway 34 and 1570. The bottommost row basically shows the intersection of State Highway 34 at 1570. And that, the findings show that in the existing conditions, it's operating poorly because of a lot of traffic demand, especially in the AM peak hour. There is a lot of demand for traffic coming from the west, going through the L3 Harris in the morning, which creates a congestion. The overall intersection works at level of service E in the morning, but works acceptably in the afternoon. There are other notable side streets. One of the examples is the Center Point Road at 1570. So it's a T intersection. There is uninterrupted traffic north-south, but then there is a one-lane each direction roadway coming from the west, and there is a stop sign at the roadway. So the traffic there is a function of the gaps in the main street traffic. So the side street experiences a little bit of delay there in the existing conditions. But the traffic demand there is very, very low right now. So it's just a few vehicles every minute. Looking at the next scenario, which is the 5-year. So once we had the 5-year background growth and the anticipated side trips for the 5-year scenario, if you don't do anything, then it shows that the delay would increase at those intersections that were identified, with several more approaches working at level of service F. As you can see at the intersection of State Highway 34 at 1570. Also, the side street approach at Center Point Road would also worsen in level of service. The intersection of FM 2101 at McCullough Boulevard, which is the entrance to L3 Harris, that also shows a little bit of delay. But again, the traffic demand there is very low, so you're looking at just 1 or 2 vehicles every minute approaching at this intersection, and there will be no long queues, but per vehicle there is a little bit higher delay than you would desire. This one shows the mitigation. So what can you do to mitigate those impacts? Looking at again the bottom row, which is the critical intersection of State Highway 34 at 1570. Our analysis shows that by adding a through lane for northbound and southbound approach, as well as an eastbound approach, would significantly improve the level of service to an acceptable level of service C. Now, these findings are consistent with the TxDOT study that is underway for the improvement of State Highway 34 from I-30 all the way to like 17 miles south to the county line. So that study also found similar, that once you widen the State Highway 34 to 2 lanes approach, and there is also capacity in the eastbound direction because you also have receiving lanes on the east leg of the intersection. So if you add a through lane in the eastbound approach, then that would also improve the level of service. And those findings are consistent with the study from TxDOT. Going to the 10-year scenarios, the no-build condition, again, if you don't do anything to improve these situations, then the delay will keep on increasing. Not only the 3 intersections that identified in the 5 years would experience delay, but notably the FM 1570 intersection at US 69 will also experience delay for the eastbound approach, which shows a level of service E. Now that is because of we added a significant amount of traffic from the middle school that is anticipated there. And there will be a lot of eastbound right turns trying to access the school from going south. So that would increase the delay at that intersection if no improvements were made. The overall intersection would still operate at level of service E in the morning and acceptably in the afternoon, but the approaches like eastbound and north and southbound would have some delay. To mitigate those impacts in tenure, the improvements that we identified at State Highway 34 and 1570 that would be would continue to provide benefits for the 10-year scenario with a level of service C. At FM 1570, again with the addition of more traffic on that stop control approach, that would continue to experience delay, and after adding a right turn lane also, it would still experience delay because again it's a function of not the traffic on that side street, but how much traffic is on the main street, because they have to look for gaps in the northbound and southbound uninterrupted traffic to actually negotiate left turns. So majority of the delay, and again the delay shown is for the eastbound approach only. The overall intersection would continue to operate at acceptable level of service, which is majority of the traffic is in the north and southbound direction. In addition to that, the intersection at FM 1570 and US 69, we recommend adding a northbound left turn lane. Based on the feedback during our draft presentations, we evaluated different scenarios and whether you can do something to the signal timing to improve that. But the geometry of the intersection does not allow concurrent south and left, southbound and left, northbound left turn movements. So they have to be operating in split phase, which is one approach after the other. And in the eastbound direction, even though the demand is very high, there is already a right turn lane, dedicated right turn lane, which has its receiving lane further on the south leg. And we don't recommend adding another right turn lane there, because what's happening is you already have 2 southbound left turn lanes, and a right turn lane adds a 3rd southbound left turn lane, which is dropped just in front of the school right now there. So if you were to add another lane, then you would have 4 lanes. You have to drop it to 3 and 2, which is not a desired situation. So instead, adding a northbound left turn would, and then retiming the signals would help improve the level of service overall for the intersection. And again, this is based on 2,000 students at the school, and we recommend that once the site plans for the school are finalized, then there should be another detailed study looking at all the possible access and exit routes for the school, the queuing for the pickup and drop off, and that would give a better idea of what improvements would need to be made based on those specific plans. So basically, in the summary,
when you looked at adding lanes and things like that on that chart, if you look at the bottom down there, it's 34 and 1570, and I can't read it all, but you talk about adding lanes. You realize that those roads are TxDOT roads, not city roads.
Yes.
And TxDOT would have to go through and do that. Or is that something that Freese and Nichols didn't worry about, whether the city could do the improvements or whether TxDOT did the improvements?
So those improvements, we looked at all the current studies that are ongoing, and the improvements, we recommend those improvements because, first of all, that was our finding based on the analysis, but then we also found, based on the documents that we got from TxDOT public meetings, that they are already planning to improve the north and southbound. So the city, it's a TxDOT property, so the TxDOT improvements would take care of that. The eastbound approach, so there is also another study going on to improve the FM 1570 from I-30 all the way to State Highway 34.
The only improvements I've seen, and Dee, you may want to jump in here, but the only thing that I've seen that TxDOT's working on is expanding I-30 and improving the on-off ramps there. I've seen nothing that says they're going to do improvements as far as adding extra lanes like 34, 1570, things like this. I know that in about 3 years, they're looking at expanding the 2-lane road from 30 to 34, which is on 1570. But I find it difficult that, I guess I just need to read your report in detail to better understand this, but there are certain things the city can do, and there are certain things that TxDOT needs to do.
Right.
I think the good news of this report is that all the places that need improvement are on system, which means that it will be a TxDOT responsibility. And as to 34, that study is now pretty much complete. The short-term, one of the main short-term projects is to reconfigure the 1570-34 intersections so that it'll be compatible with 1570 going west to I-30 when it's made into a 4 or a 5 lane. So, so that will all be done, and there'll be added lanes coming east and then north. They're going to add another turn lane for northbound traffic turning onto 1570 going toward the airport. So that's all in the works, and those are short-term improvements that they're going to do prior to going to a 4-lane, 5-lane configuration on 34. So that's the, I guess the good news is that most of this probably shouldn't be city responsibility when it gets down to it, because it'll all be on system.
Well, kind of what I was looking for in this analysis is what can the city do to improve our traffic flow, particularly in that part of town? And you know, there's some things that we can do, and there's some things that feeding it over to TxDOT, and maybe what we need a list of. These are improvements that need to be done, but need to be done by TxDOT, so that we can take that to them and say, look, here's the analysis. Put it into your queue.
Yeah, the 1570 is supposed to let in 2022, the widening of 1570. And so I suspect, and that in discussions with TxDOT, they actually want to do the intersection of 1570 and 34 before the widening takes place. They recognize that as an immediate need.
Thank you.
No, I think one of the major things will be working with the school district. Middle school is built there where the old TxDOT headquarters was, and back behind Lamar. That's going to cause some real reconfiguration changes.
They're going to have a major problem trying to build a school there with all the environmental problems. They were going to use that as a temporary place, and then they found out there's terrific environmental problems there, and that's why they wouldn't even put portable schools there when they were redoing schools. I don't know how they're going to build a middle school there.
But even if you exclude the TxDOT property, where the environmental problems are, school district has 35 acres there, from Lamar all the way back to Oak Village West. And 5 acres of it right behind TxDOT that the school district actually did a trade with the city many years ago to trade some property, because the city used to own the property right behind TxDOT. But I think they envision the entrance coming in off of 69 for the middle school, so it doesn't add to the traffic issues on 1570 going into Lamar.
Well, it's going to make 69 right there a major headache, because that was one of the things that we talked about when they were going to put in a temporary school, is how do you handle the traffic coming east and west on 69 when it goes from 4 lanes down to 2 lanes right about at that same point, and there's a lot of traffic that's going past there. It's just going to be a real bottleneck, and I think we need to work with GISD and have them brief us on what their thoughts are, because I didn't know they were planning on building a middle school there.
Well, I think the superintendent indicated it's between 5 and 10 years down the road, but you'll end up with probably 4 lanes on the southeast bound 69, because you'll have to have a turn lane going in. Also going to have a lot of traffic coming from 69 business going into that site. Just think of the number of students that live in the north part of town that would be coming to, depending on how they think their plan is to take sixth grade back to the middle school. So there'd be 2, 6, 7, 8 instead of one 7, 8 school, separate sixth grade center.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Do you expect these schedules that TxDOT has currently have in place, do you expect those to slide as a result of the budget issues? Or state's going to probably be impacted by COVID and oil, et cetera? Are these funds encumbered and committed, or how's that going to work? Or do you know?
That seems logical. The answer is I don't know.
Okay.
I think we've talked to TxDOT about that. They think everything's okay for now, but some of those are bond funds too. So some of the, particularly the Category 12 money that they're using for I-30, I think most of that comes, all of that comes, I think, from bond sales.
Okay.
So that's $145 million.
So this
Category 12 that's dedicated to I-30 in Hunt County.
Okay. Thank you.
And just to expand on that point that Dee made, that for the improvement of Highway 1570, the bottleneck, the critical bottleneck is the intersection, of course. So you can do the improvements to the intersection first by just adding the lane, and it doesn't have to, it just makes change to the eastbound approach because you already have the receiving lane. So majority of the improvement is there, and then you can follow by widening the entire roadway. So it can be done in phases. This is the 10-year scenario, no build versus build, showing what levels of service are there at different intersections and what it can be improved to with the suggested improvements. So same information is presented before in the chart. The short-term recommendations from the study are at the intersection of 34 and 1570, add the north and southbound left-turn lane, through lanes, and also an eastbound through lane like I discussed. At the intersection of Center Point at 1570, adding an eastbound right-turn lane, and at the intersection of 1570 at Joe Ramsey, adding a northbound left-turn lane to improve the levels of service in the short term. For the Center Point, like the stop control intersections that are the side streets, one of the solutions for those is access management. What typically, this is not uncommon to find very heavy traffic on a major thoroughfare, and the side street would have a delay for a few vehicles. But they would not meet warrants for the signal because there is not enough side street traffic. So doing access management would actually collect traffic at few locations, and then you can have a more controlled intersection there, and it would meet the warrants for putting in a signal there. Some of the long-term improvements, those are mainly for the thoroughfares in addition to the intersection improvements. And this is mainly, these are not required to meet the 5 or 10 year demand, the immediate demand based on the development that we identified, but for the long term, mainly for preservation of right-of-way. So as applications for different developments come in, you already know what is the ultimate plan, and you can dedicate the right-of-way for that. So this is consistent with the previous studies and findings, but what this study found is that we recommend, first of all, from the north end there, an east-west connection between I-30 and 1570 north of Center Point Road. The other connection east-west is extending from 34, so it's basically a parallel roadway south of Traders Road that would serve as a collector facility, 4-lane wide based on the thoroughfare plan. That would provide a good grid pattern of east-west thoroughfares and relieve future traffic from Traders Road. And also it would take, there is a big mixed-use development planned just on the west side of 34 where that roadway would meet the intersection at Highway 34. And it would help with the east-west demand. Further, that connection can be extended through the Board of Development property to connect to Highway 3301. That has a lot of constraints on floodplain, but that is shown on the city's thoroughfare plan. And what that would do is, again, create a continuous east-west road to relieve traffic for other east-west roads. The other connection that was discussed was the FM 3301, County Road 3301. It's a two-lane dirt road between Highway 69 and Highway 1570 right now. But the residential development just at the intersection of Traders Road, as part of the development, the roadway was extended to the east to tie into Highway 3301. Improving 3301 would basically create another east-west corridor, and that would help traffic coming north and south on 69 to have another route to come into the city and future development along Highway 34. That would also relieve some of the traffic that comes from FM 2201 from the south near the Majors Airport. That comes to basically L3 Harris and further to future development up north or the middle school, for example. And that connection would help relieve that congestion also and provide another alternate route from the south and southeast. Another east-west route, small connection, is the extension of Aerobic Lane, which is just north of FM 1570, the east-west leg. And we recommend extending it to the future Roy Warren, the expanded Roy Warren Parkway to form another east-west connection. The north-south one, so Roy Warren Parkway is already a 4-lane wide facility between Traders Road and 69. And it's a 2-lane dirt road right now, south of Traders, all the way to 1570. And recommend expanding it to its ultimate thoroughfare configuration, which is a 4-lane wide divided facility. And that is, the city thoroughfare plan shows it as a major arterial in the north-south direction. So that would help improve the circulation in the north-south direction. Once all the empty parcels are developed, this roadway network would provide good access as well as circulation and redundant routes. So you have a good network in this study area. So following that, we made the update to the thoroughfare plan. On the left side, you see the thoroughfare plan from the overall sub-area study that was done 10 years ago, and it did not really address the thoroughfare. It showed connections into the east sub-area, but it did not show the whole network. So we took that small area and expanded it and updated the thoroughfare network that would serve as the guideline for the east study area for as far as the thoroughfare network long-term needs are concerned. That was the last slide, and if you have any questions, I can take those.
Do you have a written detailed report that's going to explain all that for us?
Yes, we have a detailed report that was submitted to the city and available, yes.
Thank
it
you.
would have detailed information on all the developments, the calculations, also the recommendations on various thoroughfares. There is a detailed explanation of all the data in the report.
Anybody have any questions for him? All right, thank you very much.
Right, thank you.
Summer, we got about 10 minutes. Can we get your budget or community development? Which one do you want to get? Okay. Steve?
I told Summer I could do it in 5 minutes, and they told me when I got
We'll
through.
time you.
They told me when I got through it's 20, so when you get tired of hearing it, just.
We'll time
But
you.
here's the crux of the deal that'll help you guys. I did not ask for anything. We should be good right there, right?
You're wasting time.
This is the layout of the department. We have a director, a planner, executive secretary, permitting clerk. We have a new position that you guys let us create last year, property maintenance specialist. And we also have a new code enforcement officer y'all let us get last year. I'm excited about. I'll talk about those in a minute. And then, of course, we have 2 building inspectors, one that's at L3 all the time because we need to keep things there where they're not public records, so he stays out there. I see him about once every 2 months. He's doing a great job. They love him. We have a public health person, and then we also run the abatement crew for code enforcement. Russell Rice is our superintendent, and then we have 6. A lot of abatement guys that do all the mowing and stuff. And in the community development, we're responsible for planning, building permits, inspection, code enforcement, abatement, sanitation. We also do GIS. Our goal is to ensure community values are reflected in the physical environment, and roles and responsibility to review zoning applications and procedures, plating, implementing policy by ensuring compliance with the zoning ordinance, conduct pre-app and plat review meetings, comprehensive land use planning, staff and planning and zoning meetings. And y'all have heard that before. I think y'all pretty much know what all those are, but stop me if you want to. I'm trying to go real quick here so I can get through. As far as code enforcement, those are the items that we try to take care of: drainage, erosion, junk vehicles, trash, illegal dumping, overgrown properties, outdoor storage, businesses operated out of their home, illegal posting of signs, building code violations, constructing without an approved permit, and substandard structures. I did this to 2019. I didn't do it up to the current date, but this is what we look like the last 3 years. As far as complaints and cases, and you can see that our cases go up every year, and they went up quite large 2019. And part of that's going to be because we had the new code officer the last 2 or 3 months of that, so that actually helped that number. These are the lots that we abated over the last 3 years. I don't know what happened in 2018, but last year we took care of 2,252 lots. That's a bunch. That's a lot of work. So I don't know if you can see it right now because it's been a little different the way we're doing things. And this is our, how many permits we issued in 2019 is 1,354. We did 4,479 inspections. I didn't get the years before, but it's continuing to go up. Residential construction, commercial, these are the things that we permit and inspect: commercial, industrial, schools, accessory buildings, airport permitting. Adopted to do 2018 ICC building codes, electrical, mechanical, plumbing, concrete, and energy. We did that last year, brought that before the council, and we did that, and we're ahead now. We've been behind for a long time with keeping up with other cities. Now we're right in step with them. I appreciate y'all letting us do that. We were running in 2006. Our public health, we ensure that citizens of Greenville are protected from conditions detrimental to health and safety. We've gone through these before. You know, we inspect all retail establishments, and that includes restaurants, grocery stores, convenience stores, commercial kitchens, food service areas, and schools, hospitals, hotels, child care facilities, nursing facilities, and other establishments where food is offered or served to the public. We inspect public and semi-public pools, pool handler registration and classes. And when we talk about public, semi-public, Splash Kingdom would be a public pool. A semi-public would be a motel or hotel. Those guests. We do those every year. We try to get to each establishment at least twice a year. And of course, obviously, we work complaints when we get them right then. And some of the goals that we set for 2021 was property maintenance specialists. And I want to talk about that a little bit. Continue to address downtown property maintenance, and continue to address property owners about residential property maintenance as well as substandard properties. And what we did when Steve took that over and we put him in that position, you know, downtown, we all want to get something done with downtown. So what he initially did is he went through walking the whole town, all over the place, wrote all the different violations up, and then he sent a courtesy letter out to everybody and said, I'm not getting you right now, but in sometime in the future, I'm coming. Give me a call, and we can talk about these things and get them done. And we're seeing some work done with that. There is some work getting done. He's got a rapport with most of those folks. He's gone down. He didn't just write them a letter. He walked into businesses and met those folks, and he's getting where he knows them. So that's going to be a lot better to be more personal with somebody than getting violation letters. Doing a great job. Substandard properties, we've had to change up how we do that a little bit. Our research our research has not been thorough enough, so we're doing those a little different. They're gonna take a little longer to do, but it's also gonna make sure that we find a homeowner that has a possibility of fixing the property, or also to keep us from getting sued when we didn't get everything. So those are a little slower. Steve is also doing that part of it. As far as planning, the comprehensive plan, we're still working on that. It's about 60% complete. And we hope to bring that to you guys by December to adopt. I think we're on track with that. So we're trying to get that done. We want to continue to provide excellent customer service to a thriving city. We're blowing and going. One thing I say about COVID, and I'll shut up, is that we never missed a beat. We continue to do all our inspections. We had to do them a little different. We continued to do building permits. We did them a little different, but we stayed up, and that was my fear, was that if we shut completely down, what we would come back to, trying to get caught up. And when we finally started opening office back up, we right there, we're right where we were, and I'm real happy about that. And that took some hard work from staff folks that, were real uncertain about what was going on. It came in and worked every day. If you ask me, I have the greatest staff in the world. I love those people. I mean, they're loyal as can be. They do try to do the right thing for the city. I did good, didn't I, son? Usually I just blow and go, but if y'all got any questions,
Anybody have any questions for him? All right, thank you. You want to put off your budget? Then we'll put it off until next time. All right, at this time, I've got 5:58. We will close the work section and hopefully start again at 6.